Well, hello YouTube. This is our next instalment in our series of discussions from McArdle Legal. It's September 2014, and I thought it's very relevant to talk about something that comes across our desks all the time, and that is people who say they are what they are not. Overwhelmingly, it's employers suggesting that their employees are contractors. Sometimes we have contractors who want to be employees, but it's usually for very obvious reasons, usually to dodge tax, but mostly it's either the invoking of entitlements to or the avoidance of entitlements to, depending on where you're sitting, to annual leave, long service leave, payment of the superannuation, award coverage, that sort of thing. People often go along to their accountant. I love accountants, I have one myself, but you should not take legal advice from accountants, you should not take legal advice from doctors, and you should not take accountancy advice from lawyers or medical advice from lawyers, but for some reason or other people do. Now I just want to show you something absurd, and it's no less absurd than what we see all the time, and it's done with great solemnity, but this is stupid, and it's just not portrayed as stupid. This is a dog, and I can show you though, in order to get a bit of balance, this is a cat, and it's very easy to make a dog a cat. All you've got to do is go to your accountant and he'll give you a 20-page piece of garbage that says no matter what anybody thinks, no matter how it looks, then this dog is a cat. Works alongside this dog, but it's not really a dog because it says it right here. It's a cat. And the thicker the contract, the better, and the more convincing it is. The more nonsense you write, the less nonsense becomes. I once had a fellow who refused to believe me when I told him how to solve a particular problem simply by changing some words in an arrangement. But the second opinion he got charged him $20,000. And how could I be right? This other guy was charging him $20,000. He must have been right. So let's put our cat over here for a minute, our dog over here for a minute, and just talk about what reality is. It is possible to come to work and work as a contractor, and it is possible that you aren't an employee when you work, but this has been argued about so many times because of the amount of self-interest and the amount of nonsense that's talked about in the context that it's worth discussing. Now there's 7 criteria that we've got out from all of the authorities. There's a couple of quite useful cases that have been talked about. Look them up yourself. The Mary Kay Cosmetics case, the Weight Watchers case, the Malta travel case. All of these say in effect the same thing. And here's some condensing of the reality. How is this not a cat? I think it's actually a stuffed dog. No argument about this one because it doesn't say cat on it. Now, here are the criteria. Portrayal of the relationship. If you have, say, a managing director and that managing director represents your company, or if you have a sales manager, that sales manager represents your company. If you have a person working there and they are seen as part of the company, then you can't say at tax time, and you can't say when the time comes for annual holidays and so on, that they're a contractor. The fact that you've got a piece of paper stuck around their neck that says contractor has got nothing to do with it. It is the portrayal of the relationship. Then there's control. If you come to work and do what you're told from time to time within your skill set, I actually had a forklift driver who was a contractor, worked in a factory, picked things up, took them out to the yard, delivered them, came back with his empty forklift and took other things back to the yard. He was a contractor because of the label around his neck. Well, what rubbish. So the control. If the person performs work according to the requirements of the workplace, according to allocation of tasks made, according to timetables, patterns of work and so on, they're not in all likelihood a contractor. Then there's subcontracting. If your cat, cannot go out and get another cat to do the work, doesn't have the entitlement to transfer the work onto someone else, then that's another indication that they're not a contractor. They work for you. They are not providing a specific service for you. You're not engaging someone to do the service, you're engaging someone and you're getting them to do things for you. You don't think, I'll get my room painted therefore I'll retain a painter to paint my room and that's it. You employ a painter and you might get him to paint the room one day, the veranda the next day. You employ him. It's an ongoing relationship. Then there's exclusivity. If this cat, dog, can go off somewhere else and do other things, great. Then that might be an indication that they're a contractor. That's during working hours, by the way. If that's restricted to weekends or something, then no, probably not. But exclusivity. Then the right to supervise or dismiss. If you get a person, come along, get them to work, you can terminate them on reasonable notice or they can resign on reasonable notice. It's not about performing a service. It's not about being a contractor. It's about placing themselves at your general disposal to work within their skill. They're an employee. They're not a contractor. They're a dog. They're not a cat. Creation of goodwill. Well, if that forklift driver was not exactly engaged as I think he actually did have an ABN number and it was a Jim Smith trading as Jim's forklift hire. Well, if all he worked for was you and all he did was move your stuff from the shed to the yard, then it is just absurd to think that he was creating any goodwill, any sort of business acumen for himself, any reputation in the community as a forklift driver for himself. Then the use of the remuneration. If you only pay the person to perform work, then you don't pay them anything for rent, anything for on costs, anything for overheads. You simply pay them their wages and you allocate payments such as annual leave and long service leave and superannuation as required by law, then they're almost certainly an employee. So it is absolute nonsense and it's probably illegal to say that people who work in your workplace are what they are not. If you're an employee, then our blanket warning is to stop saying you are a contractor. If you employ a whole lot of people as contractors when really, according to the standards of a reasonable person, and in that I include the Australian Tax Office, by the way, and definitely the Fair Work Ombudsman, then if on the standard of the reasonable person they are employees, then stop saying they are cats if they are dogs. And the thickness of the contract has nothing to do with it. It's actually the facts of the matter. There's actually a federal court judgment that says if it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. If it has feathers and a bill, it's probably a duck. It is not a fox. So a word of strong warning that is never heeded because self-interest encourages people to not heed this warning. People should be paid for what they are and portrayed as what they are. So this cat is really a dog. He's not a cat. A contractor is not an employee. An employee is not a contractor. It all depends on the reality. So this is a reality check, and I hope this reality check has been useful. Until next time.